The spirit of Joseph Goebbels materialized in the shadowy room, his piercing gaze unblinking. His presence exuded control, and his voice carried the calculated authority of a man who once shaped the minds of millions. "History has judged me in many ways," he began, his tone cold and precise. "Some call me a monster, a manipulator. Others call me a visionary. But the truth, as always, is more complex." He raised his hand, as if to address an unseen audience. "My goal was never simply to make people believe in Hitler or the Third Reich. No, my goal was something deeper, something rooted in the very essence of society. I sought to create reality. I knew that those who control information, control the perception of the world." Goebbels' eyes hardened as he continued. "Propaganda is not a mere tool of manipulation, as some see it. Propaganda is the soul of a nation. It is the means through which ideals are transformed into action, through which nations are united or divided. And it was through propaganda that the Third Reich achieved greatness. It was through propaganda that people believed in the impossible." He moved closer, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "What many don't understand is that in times of crisis, the truth becomes relative. Truth is not absolute. Truth is what people believe. And if you can create that belief, then you've won. I've been criticized for manipulating the masses, but that's exactly what any leader who desires total control must do. It wasn't any different from the leaders before me." A glint of pride flickered in his expression. "People think that leaders are those who wield physical power, those with the armies. But the true leaders are the ones who control the minds of the people. The ones who control their emotions. That's what my propaganda did. It ignited passion, loyalty, hatred, love. All through words." A heavy silence settled over the room as Goebbels reflected on his own methods. It wasn't easy, of course. It was no simple task to convince an entire nation to make sacrifices, to accept war. But we did it, with the help of words, music, images. Everything was carefully crafted to feed the ideology we wanted to spread. Of course, some say what we did was immoral. But is it immoral to do everything for the good of the nation? Is it immoral to create a unified, strong society? Throughout history, people have united under ideologies, under beliefs. Isn't that what we've always needed to survive? Question of the day: people think that Hitler was the supreme leader, but he would have been nothing without his message. And that message, that vision, I created it. Who else could have done it? No one. It was my job to build a myth, to craft a narrative that the people would believe with their very souls. I was the architect of that lie, and it was a lie that built the Third Reich." Goebbels stared intently at the interviewer, as if challenging the very question. "Do I lie when I say the Third Reich was a nation that achieved the impossible? Do I lie when I say that, thanks to our ideology, we were able to make millions follow a cause as if it were their only reason for being? No, I do not lie. I shaped history, and like any history, it is a story told from the perspective of the one who creates it." Gianni Versace. Goebbels took a step closer, his figure casting a long shadow in the dim room. "People forget that in every era, leaders are judged not by their actions, but by the perception of those actions. I understood the importance of perception. I knew that if I could create a vision so powerful, so overwhelming, it would not matter what the truth was. What matters is what people believe." His gaze grew colder. "They say I used propaganda to spread hate, to fuel division. But what do they know of unity? What do they understand about forging a people into one powerful force, with a singular purpose? Propaganda isn't about division, it's about creating a collective consciousness. A people united under one cause." He paused, as if reflecting on his words. "Yes, I knew what we were doing was dangerous. But every great cause is. Every nation that has ever achieved greatness did so at a cost. The Third Reich was no different. It was a risk, but one that had to be taken. There was no other option if we were to become the power we dreamed of." The spirit's voice softened momentarily. "I hear them now, the critics, those who say it was all a lie. They say I deceived millions. But every leader deceives, in a way. To lead is to present a vision, to make others believe in it, even when it is not entirely grounded in truth. The difference is that I succeeded. I made people believe in something greater than themselves." Goebbels' tone turned bitter, his eyes narrowing. What's ironic is that, even now, my tactics are still used. Every day, governments, corporations, they use propaganda. But they don't call it that. They call it advertising, marketing, public relations. But it's all the same. It's the manipulation of the masses, the control of the narrative. And they think they're different from me. He stepped back, his voice gaining strength again. The truth is, the public is easily swayed. They want to believe. They need to believe. And that is where a leader steps in. A leader doesn't wait for truth to be discovered, they create it. They craft a vision that resonates, that aligns with the desires of the people. That's what I did. Goebbels' eyes glinted with something close to admiration. You see, propaganda isn't just about spreading lies. It's about crafting the truth. You take the pieces that fit, you shape them, and you present them in a way that people cannot resist. It's art. It's about creating a world that feels real, even when it is not. His expression hardened again. People say I used the Jews as a scapegoat. And yes, I did. But it wasn't just about them. It was about creating an enemy, something to rally against, something to focus all the hate and fear upon. Because a people without a common enemy is a people without direction. And a leader without direction is useless. He let out a small, bitter laugh. What's strange is that the same tactics I used to build a nation, to rally people, are the same ones that are used today. The media, the entertainment industry, politics. It's all propaganda. The world hasn't changed. People are still manipulated, still led by the same psychological forces I understood all too well. Question of the day: it's easy to say that what I did was wrong, that my methods were unethical. But what is ethics in politics? What I did for the good of Germany. And at the time, that's all that mattered. Goebbels continued, his presence more imposing now. You must understand, the world I lived in was not the world you see now. We were in the midst of war, of struggle. Every nation around us was fighting for its survival, its power. We had to fight too, but our fight was not just on the battlefield, it was a battle for minds. He paused, as though the weight of his words settled in the room. Many people think of me only as the architect of the Nazi propaganda machine, but that's a narrow view. What I was creating wasn't just a political narrative, it was a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing the world. And I knew that if I could get the people to see the world through my eyes, I could make them do anything. Goebbels' voice grew colder as he continued. In a time of crisis, you cannot afford to be weak. You cannot afford to hesitate. Every action you take, every word you speak, must be decisive. That's why I was so ruthless with my message. That's why I never wavered. I couldn't afford to. A nation that hesitates is a nation that falls. The people needed to believe in the strength of the cause, in the vision we were presenting. And that belief had to come from me. A flicker of something almost like satisfaction passed through his eyes. People talk about the lies I spread, the hatred I incited. But they don't understand that hate is a powerful force. It can be channeled, shaped, directed. And when it is, it unites people. It gives them focus. It gives them purpose. And in times of war, purpose is everything. Goebbels' expression became more intense, his voice more insistent. You think of propaganda as simple manipulation. But it is much more than that. It is the creation of reality. You shape the way people think, the way they feel. You give them something to rally behind, something to believe in. You give them a cause. And once that cause is planted in their hearts, nothing can stop them. He took a step forward, his presence looming. What I did was no different from what any other leader has done throughout history. The only difference is that I succeeded. I understood the power of the narrative, the power of words. I knew that if I could control the narrative, I could control the people. And if I could control the people, I could control the future. Goebbels' eyes seemed to burn with intensity now, his voice rising. People have always followed leaders. They have always followed movements. But those movements don't just happen, they are created. They are carefully crafted, shaped by those who understand the power of influence. And I was one of those people. I knew how to influence, how to persuade, how to make people follow without question. A brief silence filled the air, then Goebbels continued, his tone dark and foreboding. You can criticize my methods all you want, but the truth is, what I did worked. It worked because I understood human nature. I knew what people wanted to hear, what they needed to believe. I knew that fear, anger, and nationalism were powerful tools. And I wielded them with precision. He stared into the interviewer's eyes. What's the difference between what I did and what happens today? The methods may be more refined, more subtle, but the principles are the same. The media, the politicians, they all use the same tools I used. They shape the narrative, they control the story. They make people believe what they want them to believe. And the masses follow, just like they did in my time. Goebbels smirked, as if he were reveling in the irony. The truth is, the world hasn't changed. The tools may be more sophisticated, but the game is the same. Leaders today are still playing the same game I played. And the masses? They are still being manipulated, just like they were under me. The only difference is that now, they don't even realize it. His tone became sharper. You can call it propaganda, you can call it manipulation. But in the end, it's all about control. Control of the message, control of the narrative, control of the people. And when you control the people, you control everything. That's the lesson I learned. And that's the lesson I taught the world. Goebbels' face hardened, his voice growing colder with each word. You think I was evil, a monster. But I was a product of my time. I did what I had to do. I created a vision, a reality that millions believed in. I shaped history with my words, with my propaganda. And in the end, history is what you make of it.